Good evening. I'm Ruth Brown, Escape Social Anxiety on Facebook. So glad you're here. It's a beautiful Monday here in Leesburg, Virginia. It was a little cold in the 40s, but not windy, and just a nice crisp feeling out there. I hope it was good weather where you're from. So, what I wanted to start out with was talking about what self love is not. Okay, I think sometimes it's easier when we can compare and contrast a topic. And so, I'm going to talk first about what it is not. Okay, so self love, the opposite of self love is self hatred and self loathing. Uh, it, it, excuse me, it involves a profound dislike for ourselves and for yourself. We're individuals where we can be overly critical, very harsh, very judgmental towards ourselves. So people who do not like themselves definitely are always going to struggle with low self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness, lack of self-compassion, instead of nurturing their well-being, which really is, that's what self-love is. It's nurturing our inner well-being. So when a person is not, when they do not care for themselves, when they have a profound dislike for themselves, or not engaging in self-love, they might engage in self-destructive behaviors, neglecting their physical health. And there we have Ohio. Awesome. They may engage in self-destructive behaviors, neglecting their physical, emotional, mental health needs. How many people do you know who refuse to go to the doctor, refuse mental health services no matter how hard you try? They just won't do it. Um, they don't think they need it, but there's also something there. They think that they can do it by themselves. But it's really about self-love, isn't it? It really is. So the opposite of self-love involves a negative and detrimental relationship with ourselves. It's characterized by lack of self-acceptance, lack of kindness towards ourselves, and lack of care towards other people. Now, years ago, and here we have Virginia. Years ago, I was giving a talk in my church. Believe it or not, I was a young adult, and I grew up in a very fundamentalist church. And I introduced the concept of self-love, and I about got people to throw things at me. It was so funny. I wish I had a picture of their reaction when there's a verse that says that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves. And I said, I think this means we are to love ourselves. And that just caused so much anger. And so I look back on that and just really laugh because, back in the day, we associate self love with, we associated with being ego driven. And so I thought we could talk for a few minutes about what it means to be ego driven. And then we could see what self love is, so you can really see that we're not talking about ego driven. So, if here's some signs that a person may be ego driven. If they're into material obsessions, they place excessive value on material obsessions, considering them closely tied to their identity. And that's the big thing. When they're closely tied to their identity, it might be your ego talking. And they need to reflect on why do they want other people to see them that way? Why do they need to see them as having these materials and that type of thing? And this is going to be something that really is going to step on some toes. Being a gossip lover. Woo! Okay. Engaging in lots of gossip, criticism, or negative conversations can strengthen the ego. Woo! If you find yourself drawn to gossip, it's a sign that that's ego driven. So how many people do you know, okay, that they talk about others just to make themselves feel better about themselves? But that's the ego doing that. Okay, disliking others' success. Feeling jealous or envious when others succeed is an ego-driven trait. Celebrating others' achievements without resentment is much healthier, okay? So, constant comparison, if you're always comparing yourself to others, measuring your worth based on their achievements, ego might be at play. Okay. Craving respect and recognition, seeking external validation constantly, whether through praise, through titles, through admiration, indicates ego driven. Um, Defensiveness, always being on the defense, hard for you to accept feedback, hard to admit mistakes, hard to say I'm sorry. Okay. Self centered conversations, redirecting the conversation back to yourself frequently shows an egocentric focus. Okay. Rarely helping other people. Ego driven personality often prioritizes the needs of themselves over helping other people selflessly. Setting unattainable goals, unrealistic goals driven by ego, can lead to disappointment and frustration. Feeling hurt easily. When your feelings get hurt easily or you react defensively to perceived insults, your ego is at play. And I already mentioned inability to apologize, being judgmental, seeking attention, craving the spotlight or admiration can be ego driven, where you just want everybody to praise you and adore you and love you, that's ego driven. Taking credit for everything, not acknowledging others' contributions, and claiming sole credit uh, is an ego driven act, okay? And being competitive to a fault. Healthy competition is fine, but an ego driven person competes excessively, even at the expense of relationships. So those are just some things as to how the ego can get sidetracked, okay? And I think that's part of why people have such trouble with this word self love, because they associate it with being egocentric, okay? Now, there's some other things, like if you don't have a personality that's egocentric, some of us are really sensitive souls, and maybe it's been hard to wrap our heads around this whole topic of self love. So, what happens there is that there's a negativity bias, okay, that our brains have a natural tendency to focus on negative experiences and self criticism. So we may cling to our shortcomings and past failures, and we may end up defining ourselves by that instead of looking at the whole picture, looking at our strengths. And lack of acceptance is another thing. Growing up with insufficient acceptance and too much shame can lead us to believe that we don't deserve happiness or love. Okay. So I think another thing is misunderstanding self love is people associate self love with narcissism or selfishness. So it's not necessarily about ourselves, not necessarily about putting ourselves above everybody else. It's about genuine compassion and care for ourselves. So here's another thing is sometimes we treat ourselves very conditionally. We treat ourselves in ways that we would never treat other people. Okay. So some of us have a real strong inner critic that's very critical. Okay. And so that voice can make you say, unlovable. But that's not true. That's the inner critic talking. Absolutely, it is. And we can also have past betrayals and things that have happened to us in life that can accumulate to where, we could conclude that, we're not lovable, but that's just not at all true. Okay. Um, so we need to work on ourselves. But what are we talking here? What really is self-love? Okay. Now I've read some things that is not self-love, but self-love is really a regard for our own well-being and our own happiness. That's simply put. That's not being narcissistic. That's not putting ourselves up on a pedestal. It's regard for ourselves. It encompasses actions and attitudes that promote physical, emotional, mental health, as well as positive self-image and acceptance of ourselves. And I can't say the last thing enough. Acceptance of ourselves is really important. Self-love involves treating oneself with kindness, compassion, respect, recognizing one's worth and inherent value, and taking care of our own needs and boundaries. And I love that definition. I was texting my sisters today and asked them what did they think self-love was, and I love my sister's answer. I have one sister who's dealing with blood cancer right now, but she's coming along doing things that she needs to do for herself. And I loved her answer, and it was self-love is respecting my boundaries, that I can't be around a lot of people right now. Her immune system is shot, so she can't be around a lot of people, so she's just putting herself in a situation where she's mostly at home or with one or two people, and she's asking for help where normally she wouldn't ask for help. And I love that. Asking for help is saying that you respect yourself, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. So I love that answer. And while I'm thinking about it, I love the answers that you guys gave Escape Social Anxiety. When I asked you, what is self-love? The answers were just beautiful. One person said it was going to the doctor, taking care of your physical needs. Another person said it was not an option. Another person said it was seeing yourself in a positive way regardless how other people see you. I just love those answers. I thought, I've got a smart group of people. I really do. That's so wonderful. So some more things about self-love. Let's get right more to the core of some of it. Some things that we can do physically, emotionally, socially. Physical health with our nutrition. When we eat well, we're liking ourselves. When we exercise, we're liking ourselves. When we prioritize our sleep, that's when we're respecting ourselves. Emotional resilience. Now, that also means that we respect our feelings, we respect what we feel, and that at times when we're uncomfortable with our feelings, we don't have to do anything negative with those feelings. We can just say, let me take a look at that. Let me just, why do I feel that way? But just accepting even that negative feeling. Also, expressing our feelings in an appropriate way fosters emotional well-being. Social connections, having relationships that cultivate positive relationships, people who see you as you want them to see you in a positive way, that really does help a great deal. Having a reliable support system to help navigate through life's challenges is really essential. And having activities, social events, and hobbies that promote a sense of belonging is really essential. Okay, so we're talking about nourishing our whole body. And the last thing is our mental health. Okay, um, some of us take better care of our teeth than we do our mental health. Okay, so every year most insurances give people 2 visits to the dentist, but they don't recognize that maybe just, hey, 2 visits to a therapist, or to a mental health professional, and just make sure things are okay. Make sure you get to talk about what's been on your mind. But stress management is really important. Learning coping strategies to handle stress, having a positive mindset with whatever happens, having gratitude as part of your mindset is really helps to improve well-being. And just prioritizing ourselves, taking time for self-care activities such as reading, hobbies, relaxation is essential. Okay, so I'll just give you a couple examples of that. Um, so I had one person say they have terrible service. I'm sorry you do. I hope you get it. Hope it gets better. Okay, so just a couple things. And while I'm looking at this, if there's any questions that you have, again, if I don't know the answer, I'll try to get it. And so here's some examples of what self-love looks like in action. Saying positive things to yourself, forgiving yourself when you mess up, meeting your needs, being assertive, not letting other people take advantage of you or abuse you, prioritizing your health and well-being, spending time with supportive people, asking for help, setting boundaries, letting go of anger, valuing your feelings, holding yourself accountable, accepting your imperfections, setting realistic expectations, and noticing your progress and your effort. I love these things. So, why do we need self love? Okay. Well, without it, we may become highly self critical, may fall into people pleasing, and perfectionism, may tolerate people mistreating us, neglecting our own needs, and may make decisions that aren't in our best interests. So, self love is the foundation for assertiveness, for setting boundaries, creating healthy relationships, practicing self care, and pursuing our personal goals and being proud of who we are. So, I'm so glad. If you have trouble with self love, you might want to also say then genuine self care. Okay? And instead of saying, oh, I need time for my self love time, you could say, I need time here for my genuine self care. So, um, I'm wondering, do you guys have had any thoughts about self love? Have you struggled with the concept of self love? Any comments that you have about it? Love to hear any comments that you have. I'm so glad you guys are joining us here on Escape Social Anxiety. So, anyhow, so it looks like there may be no comments. That's fine. But I'm here, with Escape Social Anxiety, and as we go about this week, you might have some questions about what is self-love, some comments about it. Um, okay. Okay. Here's a person that said, "What if you realize that you are sensitive, realizing that you never feel like anyone is listening, but maybe a little off with self-love because you shop?" Okay. I think it's important to remember who does listen to you, okay, in the moments that you feel somebody's not listening to you, and that does hurt. But remember who does listen to you. And I would try to be mindful about the shopping and just try to ask yourself, what am I feeling? Is there a void here? Is there something negative that I'm trying to fill shopping with? Is it too connected with shopping and not feeling heard? So that's something you could ask yourself. So I think it's important to have compassion as we're talking about this. Please give yourself compassion, not judging yourself. Trying to understand, where this comes from. Okay, be gentle with yourself. Okay, that is self-love. Okay, so anyhow, I'm so glad you guys are here. I just love that we do this, and I'm interested in topics that you guys might be interested in, and if you could write to me on Escape Social Anxiety. Some ones that I'm thinking about might be forgiveness, and ones that I have heard of in the last week or two have been people want to know about why they do a pre-rehearsal critiquing themselves and talk themselves out of going to a social event before the event, and then why do I rehearse the event after the event. And it's part of the same coin, but I definitely want to be talking about that sometime soon. So I'm so glad you joined me tonight. Thank you for being here. Again, my shout out to my nephew Joel, who puts all this together for me, make sure that I'm set up correctly, and it's such a big help to me. So have a great week, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.